And just like that, with the click of a button, we're live broadcasting worldwide. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. This is episode 51 of Everything Teams Phone Live. We got a special show for you. Guess what? Co-host Brandon Bradley will not be here, though you see his mug on the face of that LinkedIn advertisement that shows his face on there. He is not joining us. He is still on vacation, eating his way through whatever he's eating his way through. Lots and lots of food, I'm sure. But in his place today, we have Mr. Jason Waite from Microsoft. Jason, thanks for joining us, man. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good to be back.
All right. You've got some big shoes to fill, and I don't mean Brandon because he's done 49 episodes with me, but the one episode that Mr. Doug Klein did with us from Microsoft last week was quite the show. So you have got big, huge shoes to fill. And Mr. Doug Klein, I'm sure he's watching today. So anyway,
well, I couldn't agree more with you. I don't quite have so big a personality as Doug does, but I'll do my best to fill those shoes as well. I didn't know this was a twofer, but here we are.
It's a twofer. That's right. And then we've got this is quite an interesting show today. I'm excited to introduce to you sort of our guest here. He is, and Mark, I'm going to do your light intro here real quick. So Mark Weeks is the founder of an organization called Asset Black. Now, we don't always have other organizations on that we talk about different services or different things. But today I thought it was this episode, I thought it'd be really interesting because I learned about Mark. We had a great conversation last week, and he explained what his organization does for financial institutions. And the light went off in my head going, wow, you combine what he does from a networking perspective with Microsoft Teams Phone, and you've got this locked down, secure, environment that allows you to do so much. So I thought it'd be great to have Mark. Mark, welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Rick. It's a pleasure being here.
So why don't you give us a little background, Mark? I want to understand who Asset Black is, what you guys do, and just kind of give us the 30,000 foot view, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. My wife and I started Asset Black 20 years ago. Basically a garage type company, as we all start out. And we were a Bell South complex, long distance salespeople, but we owned our own company. We didn't actually work for Bell South. We were associates. And we took to that program, and we became one of in fact, the largest provider within Bell South and complex long distance. And then when AT&T acquired Bell South, things kind of changed, and we went and started a wholesale company with data and voice. That led to us getting into the community banking business and credit union business. And that springboarded into us finding out that in the data field, the services are important, but also compliance is equally important, and definitely security is an utmost concern. So we've got very successful at that very quickly, and we were able to get up to 70% of the multi-location community banks in Georgia, and grew up to about 22 locations. And then I felt like I had run the ball as fast and as far as I could as an individual and as a company, a small company. And so we got acquired by Momentum, which is a big voice company. And that is potentially, that was just 6 months ago, and the binders are off. I mean, we now can take our product nationwide. It's very exciting.
That is so. Let's talk a little bit about that, because that's, when you get into the compliance portion for financial institutions, what are some of the things like I don't know, like the financial folks that are going to be watching and listening to this stuff, they get it, they understand it, right? Organizations may not understand what obviously Microsoft understands it, because you've got every sort of compliance regulation that's being followed from Microsoft's perspective. And Jason shaking his head, yep, for sure. There's a whole page of compliance. What are some of the things from a compliance perspective that organizations, that financial institutions are required to abide by? That, I mean, you guys know this inside and out from a network perspective, Mark. What does that look like?
Well, that's a great question, Rick. The first and foremost, a business continuity plan. What if it all goes sideways? What happens? What does Asset Black and Momentum Company, I have to keep adding that now, it's all new. But what do you do when it all goes sideways? What happens when there's a hurricane that comes up from the Gulf and travels across 5 states? What plan is in place? So that's the first thing on compliance that is pretty important. So redundancy and disaster recovery. And how are we going to do that as a network provider? The next thing is the facilities that we put the community banks and credit unions into need to be compliant with SOC 1 and SOC 2. So it becomes very important to meet or exceed those expectations. And then we need to have the proper insurances in place. And then after that, it kind of goes along the guidelines of HIPAA. A lot of the rules and regulations with HIPAA start merging together past that point. But as Asset Black, Rick, we didn't want to be in the security inside the network business. We want to build the roads and you put your own cars on there. And so we did not go down the path of doing any firewall type business. We're going to make sure your roads are open and the tolls are running good and the traffic's flowing. And we're going to make sure that road is very, very secure. But we're going to let somebody else handle the firewall and the internal information.
So interesting. I mean, and Jason, from a Microsoft perspective, I mean, man, I mean, this is compliance is like the first thing these days, right? You talk SOC 1, SOC 2, your compliance, GDRP comes to mind, and HIPAA, obviously from a healthcare perspective, but in the financial space, I mean, it's one of the reasons why Microsoft wins a ton in this space, isn't it?
Yeah, see, Microsoft has all of the real world tooling that you need. But when we're talking about compliance, you're looking at data at rest, data in transit. And Microsoft solutions have been expanded to the point now where we're covering all that data according to these compliance bodies, right? If you have SOC 1, SOC 2 requirements, Purview's got compliance assessments for SOC 1, SOC 2 that you can run against your data to see, hey, are you protecting privileged information according to those requirements properly? And again, at rest within SharePoint Online, within Exchange Online, and the way that collaboration works on those platforms, but also in transit. If you're sending sensitive information types in Teams messages, in emails, if you're sharing those files externally to parties outside your organization, we give you the tooling to control that. And then also the compliance assessments in Compliance Manager within the Purview suite to essentially confirm, yes, you are controlling that, or no, you have some gaps. Let's close those gaps in your compliance posture. Again, tying back to that SOC 1, SOC 2, we've got Sarbanes-Oxley, we've got tons of different assessments, and you get some now with E5. So that's part of being an E5 customer. You get some of those templates that you're able to use immediately day one. Hey, where are we? Where do we need to go?
That's it's kind of where I was going, because the E5 licensing, you've got E5. What else do you have built into E5 that we love here on Microsoft, on everything Teams Phone Live?
Right. And there you go. We're putting the whole picture together. E5, and I do get some flack from customers these days because there's a lot of other licenses that you can buy as a customer. The newest one that comes to mind is SharePoint Premium. Folks are like, is that included in E5? And I have to tell them, I'm sorry, it's not. Teams Premium is not. Copilot is not. But we are giving you a fantastic baseline with E5 to ensure that all of your collaborative workloads, your communications tooling, I went back to email, I went back to Teams chat, but here you go, Rick, you added phone, you did it for me. We bring all of these different tools that we have in the tool belt into the story from a compliance perspective. And now, again, fewer pieces of your data estate to manage. You don't have to look into other clouds, although you can. Purview can do that sort of thing too. But you don't have to look at data locations outside the Microsoft ecosystem. You don't have to look at all these disparate tools that give you that swivel chair effect we're always talking about. We don't want the swivel chair effect, right? You don't want that from a compliance perspective either. It's all baked into E5.
I love it. So, Mark, let's talk about the roads and the highways that you build. What does that look like, and why is it different than everyone else's network? Why is it different? Why do the like the financial industry? I mean, as a service provider, before I was acquired, by Momentum, we had I don't know, a couple of handfuls of banks and stuff like that, but never really expanded into the financial sector as strongly as you guys did. What makes your network and the things that you guys do different? What components do you bring to the table that make you guys different? Because the success that you guys have in the space is just like unparalleled. Like it's amazing. And so I look at what you guys have done and I go, that's awesome. Combined with Teams Phone, we've got a package for financial institutions to really just, check every box that they could possibly check when they go to a CIO or a board and go, here you go. So what makes your solution different? What components do you guys bring to the table?
Well, another great question. There's a term around here, we call it tribal knowledge. And I have another term for it. It's called getting your teeth kicked in by doing it the wrong way and then finding out how to do it the right way. All I have to say is the word link on that, right, Jason?
Yeah, pretty much. This has been a long story. We love talking about Teams Phone, but I got to tell you, I didn't love talking about Teams Phone's predecessors nearly so much.
OCS was amazing. What are you talking about?
Listen. I don't want to argue. It was great, but like Teams Phone, new level. I mean, it took a lot to coax me over here from this ecosystem. I don't want to make any sideways references to it by any means, but
I don't even know what that thing is back there. I don't know what it is. Never, don't even. I never even say this T word.
Yeah, and whether we like it or not,
or the Z word.
Oh well, no, you definitely can't say that one. But these guys won the last generation, and it took a lot to coax me over. I built a lot of platforms, a lot of systems in the Cisco space, and so I'm happy to be here now. Let's just say it that way.
There you go.
It's hard to beat 2024.
All right, Mark, let's back to you because we're. This is the year of Teams. Like 2024 is the year of Teams Phone. Like it really is. But I want to understand from a financial institution, Mark. Let's.
Sorry, Rick. 1 second here.
No, go for it.
It's the year of complex Teams Phone. I think you've seen with me, our customers want to build really complicated implementations of Teams Phone. They want to do webhooks based on the calls coming in. They want to address other systems and make things happen in other platforms. They want to put the whole picture together and do some really complicated things that we could never do in that ecosystem over there. So let me hand it back to you because I do want to hear more about what Mark's doing as well.
And I do. I love that the complexity, the complex sort of solutions start to get. I mean, that's where you make your mark, right? When you can deliver on these complex solutions, and bringing in this sort of disparate systems or ancillary services around that Teams Phone solution, and then you get to ride them over a network that's got the right tollways or the whatever it is, Mark. I still don't know what it is, man. You've got to show me. I'm not from Missouri, but I do need to be shown. It's that whole kick me in the teeth thing. Learning experience is going to be the way that I'll pick things up sooner. So what does it look like, Mark? Lay it out for me, buddy.
So in the banking and credit unions, a lot of the compliance, a lot of the weight is put on the firewalls. And so there's a lot of expense with each firewall. And so in that thought process, the fewer the firewalls, the less the expense. It's a pretty simple formula. But if you're setting up, and I'm not knocking SD-WAN at all, it has its place, but an SD-WAN is if I understand it correctly, is two VPNs going to a private cloud somewhere, these auditors and examiners, they want to be able to put their hands on this stuff, and they want to know where it's going. So rather than set up, as you were saying, Jason, complex network, well, heck, why can't we just use layer 2 and authenticate to the MAC address on the equipment at each location and bring it all back to a central location with redundancy, obviously, and have auto failover with two different types of transport mechanisms. And here's the thing: I'm not going to put my mortgage on the internet. I think it's very very easily attacked, and it's open to the world. So we kind of closed down all the branches and put them on layer 2, and then put a private network on top of it, bringing it back to these central locations. And that's the fun part. Now you've got a facility, a SOC 1, 2, SOC 2 facility that your firewalls are in. So you're not getting in trouble for Bob walking into your facility and going back to where your firewall is and not writing down on a log. That's a big deal in the banking world. And that goes on and on and on.
Then I'm going to ask you a question. Then how do I get back to Microsoft Teams phone? Then Mark, tell me how do I connect to Microsoft in that scenario?
Okay, so rather than setting up a VPN, we use routes. And if you think about it, how does carriers separate a pizza place from a hospital? Well, they do it with a BGP OSPF model using routes. And so what I did is, we're a carrier. So I said, well, why don't we extend that service all the way down to a customer level? So now we have a bank down in Colquitt, Georgia. And by the way, that's the home of the Swamp Gravy Festival. They have it once a year, lasts for 2 weeks. The whole town comes together and puts a play on. It's fantastic. But this bank's got 35, 38 locations, 400 miles from end to end. Now, normally in that scenario, you probably got 8 to 10 IT people. These folks have got one, because they look like they're in one building. So our network basically takes all of the complexity out of it. And now you have an IT manager managing one network, and in their view, one location.
Wow, that's compelling.
All right. And how does it get back to Microsoft? I mean, like literally, how do we pull that in? I get routes, but if are you doing the internet at the core? Is that what we're doing? So internet at the core, or direct connectivity to different things at the core? What do you connect to at the core?
So across the country, there's not many of these, but they're called carrier suites. And they're basically where the carrier, if I'm a Comcast and I'm on a Comcast phone or a data plan, and I want to get to AT&T, well, there has to be a building where that hands off to each other, right? Well, there's a few big ones across the country, and that's kind of where we live. So our internet is a collaborative of a bunch of different internets in case a ransomware DDoS attack or something crazy like that, that we can switch over to another route with another internet provider outside of our organization. So that's one way we bring in Microsoft. And to really geek out, Jason, this is almost part of our platform now. The minute all these community banks and credit unions are moving away from their servers in-house or servers hosted at a colo, and they're going to cloud. Well, the one we like the most is ExpressRoute. So ExpressRoute is the cutting edge solution to me for these financial institutions, because you can be completely without internet, and guess what? You're still getting to your servers still. And there's all kinds of other benefits, but I'm going to do Forrest Gump, and that's about all I have to say about that, because I don't sell ExpressRoute, because we just build the roads and we give you a port, and then you bring in your MSP. And we always tell the MSP, always the same conversation, what's ExpressRoute? And we tell them, and then we tell them to go and spend the next 2 weeks in their home before they go talk to the customer.
Yeah, and we really try to minimize the need for ExpressRoute by having more points of presence than one might consider a baseline. I'm looking here at the list of Azure points of presence in the US, and I see about 30 of them. So to your point, if you're at any point getting back to a carrier suite, you're probably also able to access an Azure front door from there. So it's a better together story, I think, at the end of the day.
I think that's exactly, you said it right. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
The what?
No, go ahead. Sorry, I'm a bit delayed here, I think, but
The
go ahead.
MSP, we asked them to bring the keys, and you're right. I mean, Jason, we're in the carrier suites, which are where you guys are. What better thing than that for an examiner to know that he could go put his or her hands on the server farm? It's fantastic.
I like this better together story. That's pretty. That is pretty compelling, right? When you kind of put both these together, and that's what I wanted to get to is how do we connect to Microsoft? If you're closing off the banks and keeping that sort of layer two thing going, how do we access different services? And specific to the financial institutions, there's other things that they need access to. What does that look like? What are those things that they look? Something about cores, right? Is that what it is? Is it core? Is it banking solutions? What do those things look like, and how do they connect to those?
Again, that's part of the platform that makes us so successful. It's just like ExpressRoute. Well, the large platforms, and they're out there. They're people. Most folks don't even know these names, but FIS, Fiserv, Jack Henry. These are the engines that make these little banks run. And rather than bring a circuit or a service out to a bank, and we have a lot of rural banks, a lot of country, a lot of tier 2, tier 3, even tier 4 cities. They don't even have a blinking red light, and we need to get them back. So it's the same concept as we put their equipment, the core providers' equipment in our carrier suites, along with the connectivity to Microsoft. And now think about this, and most of those cores also have layer 2 transport, similar to ExpressRoute. And so now we are really a hardened network. We can take a pretty severe internet attack and survive. I mean, and we have, and we do. And our customers really don't know when they're I'm sure Jason's have got some hair-raising stories of attacks on Microsoft, and the customers don't ever know. It's the gumdrops and lollipops. So.
Yeah, they're getting more sophisticated. They're getting higher density.
Yeah. So Jason, I'm going to pivot this for just a second. We've got network stuff that we're kind of running through. Lots of kind of getting the feel for what Mark's organization provides. Let's talk Microsoft for just a moment. And Microsoft Teams Phone specifically. I'm curious, from a banking deployment solution or solutions you've seen deployed in Teams Phone, what are some of the key components or the key features you've seen in Microsoft Teams Phone? What do you see being deployed in financial institutions?
Well, common area phones for one thing. I mean, we're all about, in the Microsoft space, we're all about the identity, right? We want each user to have a hardened identity with all of the communication capabilities they need. But in a banking or credit union scenario, you have a lot of user personas that don't necessarily have a dedicated endpoint. Think about your drive-through tellers and things like that, your front desk. You don't necessarily want to have somebody logging into a Teams client there. You want that phone to sit there and work. So in Fiserv, we find often, banking, credit unions, et cetera, we have to make sure that we cover all of these interesting scenarios where multiple users need to leverage one or a few calling endpoints. And we have to go pretty deep into the identity story sometimes. It's weird on a certain level, but it gets right at the nature of identity and why an identity-based voice solution does make sense. You just have to talk about it a little bit differently. So yeah, I have several credit unions that I'm even having Teams Phone discussions with right now, as a matter of fact. And the question always comes up, well, hey, I don't want to have somebody log in when they're coming into the bank in the morning, or credit union specifically, in my case, more often than not. We don't want them to have to log into a phone or even a Teams client. Those calls just need to ring that phone on the desk like they always have. We don't want the modern changes that you're talking about. Oh, it's fine. No big deal. That's what the Teams Shared Device is all about. And we can suit those use cases as well. Super important to do that. I mean, I think, Rick, you and I talk about auto attendance and call queues and some of this other more advanced functionality all the time. But at the end of the day, phone's got to ring. So we need to make sure we're accounting for their user personas and the way they do business. And in banks and credit unions, that's going to involve some shared devices.
I did see a video this morning, I think, or yesterday. It was Tom Arbuthnot and is it Kevin Peters of Microsoft
Oh yeah.
talking about how shared calling is now in everyone's tenant essentially, and that was a big push and a big question mark because the announcement came out, said here we're shared calling, and then everyone, not everyone, but people started asking for shared calling. And Mark will explain what shared calling is in a hot second here, but and now it's in there, and I noticed it yesterday appear in some tenants where shared calling is now available. And as a carrier, we've got plans associated with it now, so that's all good. So now it can be easily deployed and stuff like that. But why don't you run through, Jason, shared calling? It's a single number inbound, no DID needed. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, that's really been the big gap. In fact, I have some old friends in the space that I came from. I'll mention it once again. When I came to Microsoft, they reached out and they're like, "Hey, we thought about doing this, but we decided not to because we couldn't just assign a single phone number to a collection of users. Useful in a micro branch scenario, right? You have a very small branch. You just need to have everybody with that branch's published phone number. It's in the yellow pages or whatever, right? Small towns, they just need to be able to receive those calls, and all those users' phones need to ring. That's what shared calling is looking to address. To your point, Rick, single phone number, calls in, calls out, same identity. You don't have to worry about, oh, did Sherry answer the call or did Ben or whomever? It's everybody gets the same number. And in those small shops, it makes a ton of sense. The only question is, right, how do you productize it? So
Yeah.
I've been trying to make sure I'm keeping up with how you guys are handling that, because back to the Better Together story, Operator Connect is my chief recommendation for how folks move forward deploying Teams phones. So
And Operator Connect, this is kind of the interesting piece about this. Operator Connect, for those of you who don't know and are listening to the show, Operator Connect is a programmatic approach that Microsoft developed so that carriers like us could interconnect with Microsoft, and we could, in tandem, provide a single SLA. And how can we provide a single SLA? Well, then that's developed by Microsoft going, hey, you've got to connect to me physically and diversely, and with those express routes, right? And they're 10 gig sort of express routes, if you will, right? They're massive express routes with carrying lots and lots of data in multiple data centers. So you've got this physical connectivity that you have as an Operator Connect provider, so that you can meet or exceed those SLA requirements. And then you go back. This whole Better Together thing is amazing because then you go all the way back and you go, wait a minute. So if Mark's building a highway for traffic for every one of these locations, and he's got express routes, and they come over to a carrier like Momentum, who's got express routes into Microsoft for Operator Connect, I feel like you've got a pretty robust infrastructure for end-to-end calling that's secure, encrypted, and probably as locked down as it could possibly be while delivering top-notch, super reliable service.
absolutely. And then
More of a statement there.
to layer over the top of that, the wraparound services that you guys provide, we very famously still don't do SMS in-house. So then you incorporate those elements of the story. You're wrapping around all the telephony adjacent solutions, and that could take the form of a contact center platform, whatever the case is. That's where the Better Together story really launches into the stratosphere for us. So and we all win, obviously, right? We are solving all of the problems. The customer is getting a comprehensive solution. Really Better Together.
Yeah, love it. One of the things I'm gonna take a few steps back here, Mark, because you've mentioned examiners a couple of times, and again, this is your world. You live in it, in the financial institutions. When we were delivering services to some of these organizations, you go through the insurance check, you go through all the different checks, and I'd provide a package. I think I even named it my banking package. And it was like the financials of the organization. They want to make sure they're dealing with a healthy organization, and it was, any certifications from compliance, and then cybersecurity insurance, all these different components that you put together for a bank. But I never, you've mentioned again, I'm going to go back to this. You've mentioned auditors and or examiners. So those people are real. Is what you're saying. Those are real folks that work with the banking institutions? Is it regularly? Is it just a spot check? Is it like an IRS audit? Like, what does that look like?
And so, when most folks go to a bank, they pull up online the health of the bank. Well, that information comes from these audits, these exams. So this is the federal government making sure that their insured money, this is my theory, is insurable. So they want to make sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing the T's. And over the years, with all the cyber issues that we have, it's becoming very the most important thing at a small community bank, and even a medium-sized community bank or credit union, to make sure that they're insurable from the federal government. So they come in. I think it's as much as once a year, unless you're having problems, and it's a few other times. You got an exam, then you got an audit. So you have an audit, which is a little different from an exam. Now, I guess I'm feeling old because I walked in. We've got so many customers, we know where they are right now and who's getting the exam and who's going through it right now. And because we always will get the phone call, we need this, we need that, we need this paperwork, we need that paperwork, we need some type of network performance diagram, et cetera, et cetera. But boy, I walked into that room last time and those examiners, I was like, "Are you sure you guys are not in high school?" Boy, were they young. Oh yeah. That kind of threw me a little bit. I walked in and I was like, wow, these guys are really young, but they were sharp. So they come in and it's crazy stuff, Rick. It's like your disaster recovery location has to be 8 miles away from your main location. That's rule 101. And here's the crazy part. What if you got one bank? What if you got one location? Which is thousands of one location banks. So we make the carrier suite the disaster recovery spot. And it just, they love it. In fact, I think I told you this, my favorite story is it's a really, really, really smart guy. He does penetration tests on banks. I got this phone call from him in the middle. This is, 10, 12 years ago. I got this phone call and he goes, "Mark, who are you?" I was like, I'm Asset Black and we do networks. And he goes, No. Who are you? What do you do? What kind of network is this? Why aren't there any VPNs? Where is everything? I can't see anything. And then I explained what it is. He goes, "Okay, great. I got 5 locations. How quick can you put it in?" And man, you're talking about somebody who, every once in a while you get it right. When somebody tells you that breaks into banks that he wants your network, I'm like, wow, this is the ultimate day for me. So simplifying, and the examiners are the same way. The auditors are the same way. It's the simplification of the network. And then when an organization becomes involved with Asset Black, one of the byproducts is we have an engineer on staff 24/7, not just one, a bunch on staff 24/7. All of our cutovers are done in middle of the night. All of our upgrades are done in the middle of the night. So it's gumdrops and lollipops when you're introduced to Asset Black, unless you're the IT guy or gal. And then we're going to say, by the way, we don't work during the day. We do all of our stuff where your employees just think they have a perfect network.
I tell you what, that's cool, man. That's really cool, because I've not met an organization that does things at night, except for patches and or updates or upgrades or maintenance. You got a maintenance window in the middle of the night. Yes. And I guess that's what ultimately this looks like, is a maintenance window, but you're doing a network swap in the middle of the night is what it sounds like. Is that what's happening?
That is it. In fact, last night I invited the whole office to go to, we have a hockey team here in Savannah called Ghost Pirates. One of my favorite. I'm a big fan now. Never watched a hockey game before in my life, and now I'm like completely hooked. I invited the whole office, and I got 90% of them said we can't go. We've got a cutover with a good-sized community bank tonight, and we all have to come into the office at 7 o'clock, and we maybe get finished at 9, 10, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. So you ride by the office, and the one here, and you always see a light on and somebody up helping a customer out, because if you think about an asset black network, is you and Jason, you probably went through this your whole life. Your view into the network starts at the DMARC inside your building. You can't see upstream. What is wrong? What has to be fixed? Where is it broken? Where's the data stopping? Oh, the carrier must be down. And then you wait 19 hours and the carrier gets back, usually from another country, going, yeah, you've done this. And the carrier gets on the phone and says, your network is fine. Well, why did it take 19 hours and why did I have to talk to 3 different countries?
Yeah.
Well, our network is upstream. And so our monitoring device, the end user actually is seeing start to finish on that data packet. And where does it stop? And if he can't figure it out, then you call. By the way, I married a girl from New Jersey. He says figuring it out. I need to come up with another term on that. But if you can't find out where it stops,
That's right. That's
then
right.
you can't fix it.
But there's some copyright infringement here going on if you start to use asset black. We'll leave the light on for you. Right. So what's it? Is that what hotel chain is that? There's a hotel chain that we'll leave the light on for you. Asset black. We're leaving the light on for you.
I think that's a Motel 6 one.
There it is. Motel 6. That's right. All right. Well, Jason, let's pivot over to Microsoft Teams because it's my favorite subject when we talk about the different ancillary services that you're seeing banks start to require more and more. When you talk about Microsoft famously not doing text messaging right now, what are the things that you see financial institutions needing to add? I mean, I'll give you my 2 really quickly, and it's text messaging and faxing, which is just it's crazy. Text messaging and faxing, and the only reason I even mention text because every CISO that's going to watch this is going text messaging is not compliant. In any way, shape, or form. But we end up doing texting. We dump it right back into your Cosmos database on your own. So we push the data back to you so that you can have it. You do whatever you want with it. We don't want it. So we just kind of hairpin that data and pump it right back into you, so you can go and record that over to Smarsh or to Global Relay or to Microsoft Purview. So besides those 2 things, faxing and or texting, what do you see in the space that's pretty happening?
Well, this is certainly an industry where fax simply will not die. So that's a decent call out. As you already know, for SMS and fax, we tend to point your direction, right? There is another workload that I see growing in popularity. And it's really sitting behind the contact center as a service logical piece, right? It's all about voice biometrics nowadays. We're trying to increase the velocity by which folks can get through these IVR systems when they call their bank. They want to talk to a person, but you want to come through authenticated, right? There's all these different optimizations that are valuable to a business. And so I've been talking a lot recently about tools that can do voice biometrics and accomplish that authentication in a automated fashion, or at least an expedited fashion. And there's a lot of solutions for it out there, but Microsoft acquired Nuance. And so Gatekeeper is a product that can do that. But in my space, I got to get more creative because folks don't tend to have quite such lofty cost appetites, right? So we start talking about intelligence you can build into flows through these extend platforms like Luware, right? What can you do to make this type of feature set work in a solution that is reasonably priced, let's be honest about it, and is built into something like Teams? We've been talking about how Teams helps you put the whole story together, the tooling, the compliance, the security through identity as it exists in Entra ID. We rename everything. Well, now we can add advanced flows through those tools like Luware. And again, you guys are putting that whole story together with and for us at the same time. So it's, SMS remains the biggest. Go ahead.
I'm gonna get back to the contact center as a service because I saw something in Teams, Jason, and I'm gonna show my screen for just a hot moment because I want to show.
Okay, as long as it's you.
Question that I want to show you something, and I am curious as to what this is. I think I know what it is, but I want to like I've got this vision of could this be that at some point in the future. So let me share my screen with you real quick, and I'm gonna bring this up, and I'm gonna bring my my team's stuff up, but you're not gonna see much more than just this right here. I found this button. Let's get share. I found this button. Oh, there it goes. I found this button recently in my Teams recognition in my team settings. So there's my calls, but there's this recognition. And I would love to know, in fact, why don't we tell the audience what's this for, number one? And then number two, when you talk about biometrics, I was like, oh, I wonder. Anyway, so what is this in Microsoft Teams, Jason?
Well, I think we all know what happened in 2020. It sort of changed everything. The subsequent development we did against Teams was all about optimizing for the remote worker, right? Everybody was at home. We wanted to make sure that we had optimization for folks at home. Well, a lot of folks have gone back into the office, into the bank, into the credit, whatever it happens to be. And what they've noticed is if they walk into a conference room, now the folks who are joining remotely have a better experience than they do when they're sitting in the room with everyone else, interacting in person. Well, this is one of a many-pronged approach Microsoft is taking to bolster the in-person experience. We are saving signatures in both voice and face within Teams so that when you walk into a conference room to participate in a Teams meeting on a Microsoft Teams room system, that room system can identify you in that meeting. And that gives you all sorts of different functions, but the biggest one is speaker attribution. We're doing so much with transcripts nowadays. We're allowing Copilot to parse those transcripts and answer questions about what happened in the meeting. But if Copilot doesn't know who said X or Y or Z comment, it can't really give a lot of contextual information in response to the question you're asking about that meeting. So this is all about recording a voice print, recording a face print. I don't actually know how to say that very well, to be honest. So that when you have these meetings, you could be identified for many functions across the ecosystem. Another one of those that I think we might have discussed in the past here on Everything Teams Phone Live is IntelliFrame, right? We want to give everybody in the meeting room their own individual box. We three have our own individual panes of glass here in this meeting. Why not in a meeting room too? Well, the room system has one or maybe two or three cameras. There are 8 people. We need to use intelligence to chop up those participants and dedicate a frame to them. And to do that, we need real high resolution cameras too, right? But it's just one of many things that we're doing to try to level the playing field for in-person meetings versus remote meetings.
All right, so I'm going to try and I'm going to lay this out for the layman out there, which is me. Okay. So I'm going to make sure I got this right. So I'm in a conference room and I've got 6 people in a conference room. I've got one camera that's running the meeting here. Okay. It's the camera's up front and I've got these 6 folks. We're having a conversation now because we're collecting the data and we're transcribing the data. And because we want to, we want to do sort of sentiment, meeting sentiment. We want to do all sorts of sort of Copilot, AI sort of component things, right? And I got Copilot now, so I'm very excited I get to try it out. Anyway, and so now you're saying that if I've got my voice recorded, my face print, so that the system's going to understand in the meeting who said what in a transcription. Does it break it out into a transcription and go, hey, Tom is saying this, Shelly is saying this, Mark saying this, Jason saying that. So collectively, we know maybe there's a summary of meeting notes in Copilot saying, "Hey, here's what here's what the meeting agenda looked like, and here's what the not the attributes of the meeting, but here are the takeaways from the meeting." And it's assigning everything just because it's doing what it does, like it does at home, but now it's just able to pick it up from voice and face print, essentially.
Right, because in that room, you're joining from a single device, and maybe each person also brings their laptop and they also join, so they have an extra camera that can look at them only or whatever. But generally speaking, that's not the way these meetings work in the room. And so it's not very useful for the room to get attribution for all of the comments that are made, right? Conference room 204 said all of these things. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't help.
Right.
If it has voice recognition, which you configure through your Teams client here, that room system can then attribute the things you say to you, even though you didn't have a dedicated microphone that was just for you. It was the room system's microphone. But since it recognizes your voice, it says, yeah, Jason Waite said those things. Rick Garcia said those things. Mark Weeks said those things. And the same thing with facial recognition, right? It's already looking for faces to chop up all the folks in the room into their individual video panes. This just continues that story. And so,
He-
go ahead.
Here's how I'm going to tie this back into banking. I'm going to just tie this right back into banking here for a moment. Could you see a time in the future where this is how our biometrics are handled, or a portion of biometrics are handled when you're talking about the contact center, people coming in authenticated, whether, with voice biometrics as an example, as a contributing component to validation of voices and things like that for authentication?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, I'm famously terrible at guessing where we're going or what's happening next with any of the solutions that we're talking about. But I mean, that's the nice thing about this ecosystem. I keep going back to what Microsoft Online really is. It's a collection of services, and we're trying to tell a cohesive story with the help of partners like Momentum, admittedly, right? But this is a real opportunity to improve security through voice biometrics. And I got to say, some of my customers are concerned. I've had folks send angry emails to me after I talked to them about Teams Phone or whatever solution it may be. Like, hey, I see in my Teams client here, you were showing me your Teams client. So I jumped in there and I see it's asking me for my voice print. Like, what is this? What's happening here? And yeah, I mean, modern solutions require modern features and functionality like this. So I think you will see it become useful for more workloads and across additional solutions within Microsoft and just adjacent to Microsoft Online as well.
I like it. Mark, does the building the roads and the highways to these banks, does that change at the rapid pace that the rest of like Microsoft sort of voice as an example changes? Because man, it is like, I feel like every other week something new comes out and something that we do differently. Does the roads and everything that you do to keep up that infrastructure and network, does that all change as rapidly too, Mark?
We continuously make the roads more robust, and we make them smoother. The data travels faster, just like a regular road. And we also look at traffic flow to increase the capacity of the network. I guess the ultimate, we have it now where each individual location, all the customer has to bring to the show is a switch with QoS. They do have to manage their own QoS. So you usually have an MSP. Other than that, Rick, there's nothing else the customer, even in the Teams environment, when you have a very large platform, you're getting your internet not locally, you're getting it from a carrier suite with thousands of terabytes of internet available. So, having the glitches that were happening when Teams and the other guys were first introduced. See how I said that, Jason? The other guys. Most of those went away. In fact, we didn't have those issues. So yeah, the infrastructure is getting better. And I was just curious, Jason, one thing that we're running into, and I was wondering if Microsoft is addressing this, the end device. You mentioned that, like in a conference room, and we have the board of directors in this platform, and you have the the executive meetings. And one thing that I'm seeing that's problematic is the compliance of the equipment hanging off the network. Have y'all seen any issues with that? I mean, you've got stuff that has got bad things built into it.
Yeah, I run into quite a lot of scenarios where a customer wants to cobble together a room solution, right? They want to just put together all these different hardware elements. They want to bring their own compute that they've used forever, and they want to just cobble together a camera and audio solution as well. Even if it's a pretty good solution with multiple microphones and the room is treated fairly well, we have to worry a lot more nowadays about hardened devices. We want to make sure that if we're going to deploy these room solutions, they are certified. Microsoft does a lot of testing to its credit to ensure that these solutions are essentially hardened appliances. and they're going to perform in a way that provides a good user experience. I mean, everybody wants that, right? You don't want a subpar user experience, but I spend a lot of effort actually talking through why you don't really want to cobble together some random assortment of components to power what you need to be a polished solution, right? This needs to be a polished experience for these executives to even think about enabling all these features we've talked about, right? And again, once you create this speaker attribution information from what your executives are saying, and you're recognizing their faces, and you're counting the people in the room to ensure that the room isn't overpopulated, well, then we talk about what Purview can do to run compliance workloads against that information and make sure you keep your meetings secure. So you're going to label them with sensitivity labels to keep them locked down, highly confidential. Like there's this whole ecosystem, and it's a lot, right? It's complicated. And that's why you go talk to your Microsoft account team and get somebody on the phone who can really put the picture together for you. I can't encourage folks enough. We can help you. Go ahead.
Well, what's interesting, Jason, about just because you pivoted a bit to hardware, is that now in the TAC, and this is different too. You can let me know when this happened. Now in the TAC, when you walk in there, or when you sign into the Teams Admin Center, you now see the Microsoft hardware store. Like it's front and center now. The Microsoft hardware store provided by I'm gonna give a shout out to them because I always like to. They're great folks to work with. It's unifiedcommunications.com. They're out of Houston, Texas. Good folks there. Like them a bunch. Tell Ryan I said hello. But basically, they power the Microsoft Store, and it's front and center, and it's that big push to make sure that devices you're using compliant devices, with Microsoft.
Yeah, that's a good call. It's a pretty recent change. I don't know exactly when that happened. I've been dealing with a demo tenant license expiration event in my own setup here, so I'm falling behind on some of the nuances and the changes that have developed more recently in the admin center. But that's a great call out. It's easier than ever to get certified devices to provide a robust experience. Yeah, for sure.
Let me one more call out. Yeah, I'll get this is pretty interesting to kind of to speak to what you talked about, how Microsoft does exhaustive testing to make sure everything is good and compliant. We've got a customer that's got 10,000 users. They're on a legacy. I can't point to exactly where it is on your screen, but the legacy, one of those things sitting up there on your shelf right there, right? They got a legacy, and they've got, you ready for this? They've got 1,500 analog lines coming to what are called VGs. Those are voice gateways that are Cisco voice gateways. Now, they're not on the SIP gateway certification platform, those particular analog gateways, right? None that are Cisco branded, essentially. And there is a way to do it when you add the Q piece, but the idea is to remove as much of the Cisco licensing as possible, right? And just keep if you wanted to try to keep your analog gateways there. But I will tell you, so we asked Microsoft, hey, can we get these things tested and certified? You know what Microsoft came back and said? No to certification because they're not secure enough. Okay, not secure enough device from a TLS sort of encryption level perspective. Okay, cool. That's yes to will help you.
Uh-oh. I think we might have lost him. This happens occasionally.
It does.
Yeah, he'll be back in just a second, but I think he's going to segue to high density analog connectivity because there are devices now that can do what he's talking about. Let's see if we can get him back.
Now, when you say that, Jason, you're talking about applications like fax machines?
Yeah. Fax machines, elevator phones, anything that you feel like you can't root out of the infrastructure. You need it for regulatory compliance, or you need it for, fax is a great call out because often that is needed for regulatory compliance. Oh, he's back.
Sort of.
Maybe.
Lost you guys there for a moment.
Yeah, he's
Looks
back.
like my internet just had a bit of a hiccup.
We need to do a plug here. That is not an Asset Black internet service.
Yeah, Rick, while you lapsed there, we just talked through a few reasons why you may need some of that high density analog connectivity in 2024. Fax keeps coming back up. Elevator phones, red phones that are available for emergency use. If you want to just grab a phone off the wall and it instantly dials 911 or whatever the case is, right? There's a lot of applications for this, but you were going to mention, I think, a solution that's now available for high density analog functionality with Teams Phone. Is that where you were going with that?
I'm gonna say yes, and so that's a great conversation, Jason. And so you're addressing like the fire marshals wanting a loop start versus ground start.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
have you all addressed that or?
Well, and in your vertical here, right? You got front desk alarm. What do you call them? It's the panic button, right? It's essentially the panic button. Yeah, I mean that can run through these gateways we're talking about here. So it's relevant for a number of industries. It's not even really limited to just banks and credit unions, hospitals. There's all sorts of different places where this becomes necessary. And Rick made a good point. When you have high density analog devices that you just can't get rid of, you need a way to connect them to this story. So welcome back, Rick.
No, I think he's
sorry guys for that. Yeah, thank you very much thank you for carrying that, guys.
No problem.
No, go right ahead.
So I did have one more. So with the loop versus ground, what headway have y'all made on making those compliant? In that the fire marshals want the powered phone coming from outside of the building, or at least the battery that's running it monitored outside, or not any. The problem is if you're in any kind of exam opportunity and you go into any server room, 50% of the time the battery backups are dead. And the minute power goes off, the lights go off, and everything shuts down because the battery was dead 4 years ago. So have y'all addressed that yet?
Yeah,
I don't know that Microsoft does. We do.
We do.
We have we do it. I think where we've got a backup 12-hour. It's 12-hour backup, but part of the managed service for POTS line replacement is really having the 5G, 4G connectivity. Number one, number two, having the battery backup, and from the encoding perspective, making sure that it does the encoding. So we do that, and this is part of the whole ancillary services that we kind of bring around, because Microsoft doesn't address some of these things like that, right? Texting, the faxing, those components aren't addressed by them at all. So that's what makes why we work together, right? Why Microsoft and Momentum Simpatico work together so that we can deliver these solutions. Listen, I know we started a bit late today, but we're going to have to call it right at the hour. It looks like I'm having a bit of trouble from an internet perspective, so I want to before something happens again, it's weather. It's not as sunny as it normally is here in Scottsdale, Arizona. So it's just a little bit sunny, not all the way sunny. So we're gonna wrap this up, and I want to say thank you very much to special guest Mark Weeks. I appreciate you talking about banking institutions today. Jason from Microsoft, I want to say thank you very much for joining, as always, as the co-host today. I don't know if you felt like the seat was hot, or I don't know if you're going to be able to fit through the next door because you feel like you got a promotion. Your head might be this big on the podcast, but I want to say
no. Just a good conversation among friends. Loved it. Thanks for having me.
There you go. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. And guys, that's a wrap. That's episode 51, Everything Teams Phone Live. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week with number 52. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.